Jamal had no idea that helping a millionaire with a flat tire would change his life forever. It was just a regular Tuesday afternoon. Jamal, a 17-year-old high school student, had just finished his shift at the local convenience store and was walking home, his backpack slung over one shoulder. He passed by the usual strip of fast food joints, the small park where he'd spent many summer days, and the row of houses where his family lived. Nothing seemed unusual about this day until he heard the car screech to a halt. A sleek black SUV pulled up alongside the curb, its tinted windows casting a shadow over the driver. The engine sputtered before falling silent. The sound of the tires hitting the pavement echoed in the otherwise quiet street. Jamal glanced over just as the driver stepped out, clearly frustrated. It was the kind of car you saw only in movies, a luxury vehicle that seemed completely out of place on the quiet, residential street. The man who stepped out was sharply dressed, wearing a crisp suit, dark sunglasses, and a look of frustration that seemed to match the situation. His expensive shoes clicked on the pavement as he knelt beside the flat tire. Jamal hesitated. It wasn't often he came across someone like this in his neighborhood. He wasn't sure what to do, but his instincts kicked in. He walked over. "Need some help?" Jamal asked, glancing at the tire. The man looked up, his frustration quickly melting into a look of surprise. He seemed to assess Jamal for a moment before offering a half smile. "I'm not sure what I'm doing, honestly. This thing's a pain to deal with," Jamal shrugged, offering an easy grin. "I got it covered. I work at a car shop on the weekends. I can take care of this for you." The man seemed to hesitate for a moment, but then nodded. "I appreciate it, kid. I could really use the help." As Jamal knelt down to start changing the tire, the man watched quietly, clearly impressed. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows on the pavement as the neighborhood started to quiet down for the evening. Jamal worked quickly, moving with ease as he swapped out the flat tire with the spare. He had learned all of this from his uncle, who had taught him how to fix cars when he was younger. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills. As Jamal finished, the man stepped forward, a look of genuine gratitude on his face. "Thanks again, kid. I'm Marcus Lewis, by the way." Jamal wiped his hands on his jeans, standing up. "No problem, Mr. Lewis. Just glad I could help." Marcus smiled, his eyes scanning Jamal for a moment. "I'm serious, kid. I can't tell you how many times I've had to call someone for help with this kind of thing. It's not often someone steps up like you did." Jamal shrugged it off. "It's just a tire. Anyone could have helped." Marcus nodded thoughtfully, then offered his hand. "Well, in that case, I'd like to return the favor. I've got a business dinner later, but I'd like to offer you something. You name it. Dinner, some advice, or anything else you might need." Jamal paused. He wasn't sure what to say. This was a millionaire offering him something. It felt surreal. "I don't really need anything," Jamal replied with a nervous chuckle. "I'm good." Marcus smiled, his tone a bit more insistent. "Think about it, kid. You've done something kind for me, and I like to pay kindness forward. You'd be surprised how much a little favor can go a long way." Jamal thought for a moment. He wasn't the type to ask for things, but something about Marcus's offer felt genuine, and maybe, just maybe, there was an opportunity here that he wasn't seeing. "All right," Jamal said cautiously. "Maybe some advice would be nice. I've been thinking about my future, but I'm not sure where to start." Marcus's eyes lit up at this. "Advice, huh? Now, that's something I can do. I'll tell you what, meet me at my office tomorrow. I've got a lot I could share with someone like you." Jamal hesitated, his heart racing. He wasn't sure what he was getting himself into, but a part of him felt like this could be the start of something bigger. "Tomorrow?" Jamal repeated. Marcus nodded. "Yeah, I'll send you the details. Trust me, you'll want to hear what I have to say." With that, Marcus slipped into his SUV and with a wave drove off into the sunset, leaving Jamal standing there. The weight of the encounter slowly sinking in. The evening air seemed a little cooler now. Jamal walked home, his thoughts racing. What had just happened? A millionaire had asked for his help, offered him advice, and now he was supposed to meet him at his office the next day? As he reached his block, Jamal glanced over his shoulder. One last time, half expecting to see the black SUV still parked on the street, but it was gone, leaving only a quiet neighborhood behind. Jamal stepped inside his house, the door creaking behind him. His mom was in the kitchen, and his little sister was watching TV in the living room. He didn't mention Marcus or the offer. He wasn't sure what to make of it himself, but deep down, something told him that today wasn't just any other day. It was the beginning of something much bigger. Tomorrow, he'd find out what Marcus Lewis had in store for him. The next morning, Jamal could barely focus on anything. His mind kept replaying the events of yesterday, the encounter with Marcus Lewis, the millionaire who had asked for his help with a flat tire. Jamal had never met anyone like him. Marcus seemed different from the people Jamal had grown up around. He wasn't flashy, though his car said otherwise. It wasn't just the wealth that intrigued Jamal, but the way Marcus had treated him, a kid from the neighborhood, with respect and kindness. Jamal had tried to shake it off, telling himself that it was just one of those things. Maybe Marcus had just been in a rush or bored, and helping a random teenager seemed like an easy favor. But when he got the text this morning, everything changed. The message was short and simple. Jamal, it's Marcus Lewis. Meet me at 10 a.m. at my office. I'll be expecting you. The address is attached. Jamal stared at the screen of his phone, the words swimming in front of his eyes. This was real. He wasn't dreaming. This was an actual opportunity. He could feel his pulse quicken, his nerves starting to buzz. What was Marcus going to say? What could someone like him possibly want from a kid like Jamal? By the time Jamal finished his breakfast, his stomach was in knots. His mom noticed his unease. "What's the matter, Jamal? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine." "Mom," Jamal said, trying to hide his nerves. "Just got something going on today?" She raised an eyebrow. "Something or someone?" Jamal shot her a look, trying to play it cool. "It's just a meeting, nothing big." His mom didn't buy it, but she let it go. She had always believed in his potential, even if Jamal wasn't sure what that potential was just yet. He wasn't sure either, but this meeting, this strange twist of fate, was something that felt too significant to ignore. As Jamal made his way to Marcus's office, a wave of uncertainty washed over him. He wasn't sure what to expect. Would Marcus really offer him a job? Was it some kind of joke? Maybe he was just another businessman looking to take advantage of a naive kid from the wrong side of town. When Jamal arrived at the address Marcus had sent, he found himself standing in front of a tall glass building in the heart of downtown, the kind of place that made him feel small, insignificant. It was intimidating, the kind of office building where men in suits hurried in and out, each one as important as the next. He stood at the entrance for a moment, taking it all in. He didn't belong here. He knew that. This place wasn't for people like him. But Marcus had said to meet him here, and something in Jamal told him he couldn't back out now. He took a deep breath and pushed open the heavy glass doors. Inside, the lobby was sleek and modern. The floors were polished marble, and the walls were adorned with abstract art that made Jamal feel like he was in some kind of corporate museum. He walked up to the front desk, where a well-dressed receptionist greeted him with a polite smile. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I'm here to see Marcus Lewis," Jamal said, trying to sound confident. The receptionist nodded. "Mr. Lewis is expecting you. Go ahead and take the elevator to the 21st floor. His office is at the end of the hall." Jamal thanked her, feeling a mix of excitement and dread. He stepped into the elevator, and the doors closed with a soft chime. As the elevator ascended, Jamal couldn't help but feel like he was about to enter a different world, a world far removed from the one he knew. When the doors opened on the 21st floor, Jamal stepped into another sleek, polished space. It was exactly what he expected. Modern, cold, efficient. He followed the directions he'd been given and found Marcus's office at the end of the hall. The door was slightly ajar, and through the crack, Jamal could see Marcus sitting behind a massive mahogany desk, his eyes focused on the screen of his laptop. Marcus looked up as Jamal entered, his face breaking into a smile. "Ah, Jamal, you made it. Come in, take a seat." Jamal hesitated for a moment, then walked in and sat down, across from Marcus. The chair felt too large for him, making him feel even more out of place. Marcus, on the other hand, seemed completely at ease. "I know this must feel a little strange," Marcus said, leaning back in his chair. "I wasn't sure if you'd actually show up, but I'm glad you did." Jamal just nodded, his hands fidgeting in his lap. "First of all, let me be clear," Marcus continued, his tone suddenly serious. "I didn't bring you here to waste your time. You're here because I believe you have something special, something most people don't have. And I think it's time you realize that." Jamal's heart skipped a beat. He didn't know what to say. He wasn't used to being the center of attention, especially not in a place like this. "I want to give you an opportunity, Jamal," Marcus said, his eyes never leaving Jamal's. "An opportunity to change your life and the lives of others. I want to partner with you, not because of your background or your status, but because of your character, because of the way you helped me the other day. That kind of kindness and integrity, that's rare. And I need someone like you to help me build something big." Jamal blinked, trying to process what he was hearing. "Partner? What do you mean?" Marcus leaned forward, his gaze intense. "I have a vision, Jamal. A vision to create something that'll change this city. I'm not talking about a business deal. I'm talking about something much bigger. I'm talking about creating a future where people like you, like me, have the chance to succeed. But I can't do it alone. I need someone who understands people, who's grounded in reality, who knows what it's like to work hard and build something from nothing." Jamal was speechless. He had no idea what Marcus was talking about. He was just a kid who'd helped a stranger fix a flat tire. "I know this is a lot to take in," Marcus said, as if reading Jamal's mind. "But think about it. This could be your chance to make a real difference, to change not just your life but the lives of those around you." Jamal's head was spinning. This was insane. The offer seemed too big, too overwhelming. But somewhere, deep inside, he knew this could be the opportunity he had been waiting for. "What's the first step?" Jamal asked quietly, his voice barely a whisper. Marcus smiled, his expression softening. "The first step, Jamal, is to believe that you can do it. The second step is to start working with me, to begin building a future that's better for everyone. Are you in?" Jamal took a deep breath, his heart racing. He wasn't sure if he was ready for this, but he knew one thing for sure. This was his moment, and he couldn't let it slip away. "Yeah," Jamal said, his voice steady now. "I'm in." The following days were a blur for Jamal. The excitement and the weight of Marcus's offer consumed him, clouding his every thought. What was he getting himself into? His whole life had been about scraping by, taking whatever small opportunities came his way. But this was a game changer. Jamal tried to talk to his mum about it, but every time he attempted to explain, the words didn't seem to do justice to what he was feeling. How could he describe the magnitude of this chance when even he wasn't entirely sure what it meant? So he kept it to himself, letting the thoughts swirl in his head. At night, he'd lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what it would be like to leave everything behind and dive into a world so different from the one he knew. Could he even handle it? Could someone like him really fit into that high-powered, fast-paced world? Jamal knew he had the drive, but the fear of failure gripped him tightly. The following Saturday, Marcus invited Jamal to join him for lunch at a trendy restaurant downtown, a place with glass walls that overlooked the city skyline. Jamal arrived, early, nervous about making a good impression. He'd never been to a place this fancy before, let alone sat down with a millionaire to talk business. When he stepped inside, the quiet hum of conversation and clinking silverware made his nerves spike. He found Marcus sitting by a window, a small smile on his face as he looked up from his phone. "Jamal, good to see you. Take a seat." Marcus motioned to the chair across from him, and Jamal sat down hesitantly. A waiter appeared almost immediately, offering water, and Marcus ordered a light salad and soup. Jamal, still unsure of the whole experience, opted for a burger. "So how's the week been?" Marcus asked, his voice casual, like they were old friends catching up. Jamal's mind raced. It's been good. Busy." He paused. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about partnering with you." Marcus's smile didn't waver. "I figured you'd be doing that. It's a big decision, a lot of pressure, but I'm glad you're taking your time." Jamal looked at Marcus, trying to gauge his sincerity. He'd never met anyone like him before. Marcus had everything, yet there was something humble about him, like he genuinely cared about helping others. It wasn't just about profit or success. Jamal could sense that, even if he didn't fully understand why Marcus wanted him involved. "I still don't really get it," Jamal admitted. "Why me? What do you see in me?" Marcus leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "I've worked with a lot of people over the years, Jamal, and I've learned that it's not just about what someone can do for you. It's about who they are, what drives them. When I saw you that day, changing that tire without expecting anything in return, something clicked for me. It wasn't just the fact that you helped me. It was the way you did it. You didn't hesitate. You didn't ask for anything. It was genuine." Jamal blinked. "You're saying my character, that's why you want me to help you?" Marcus nodded. "Exactly. You see, this city, this whole world really, is full of people who are only looking out for themselves. But when someone steps outside of that, when they act with integrity and selflessness, it's rare. That's what I need, Jamal. I need someone who hasn't lost sight of what matters, someone who's grounded and can connect with people. That's what makes you unique." Jamal sat back, taking in the weight of Marcus's words. He had always thought he was just another kid from the streets, unnoticed and invisible. But here was this man, with all his wealth and success, telling him that his character was worth something, that it had value. Jamal had never been told that before. "So, what would I actually be doing?" Jamal asked, his curiosity piqued. He wanted to understand this partnership fully before he made any decisions. Marcus smiled again, but this time there was an edge of excitement to it. "I'm putting together a team to help launch a series of projects aimed at revitalizing the city. We're talking community initiatives, new businesses, education programs, and a whole range of opportunities that will make a real difference. But none of this works without the right people, people who get it. People like you, Jamal. The goal isn't just to make money, it's to make a change." Jamal's heart skipped a beat. The more Marcus spoke, the more the possibilities seemed to open up in front of him. He had never thought about things this way. It was more than just the grind for a paycheck. It was about building something that could last, something that could actually impact people's lives. The waiter brought their food, and they both dug in. But Jamal's mind was elsewhere, spinning, with the idea of what Marcus was proposing. What if he said yes? What if he took the leap? "You still have a chance to back out, Jamal," Marcus said, as though reading his mind. "I'm not pushing you, but I'm offering you an opportunity to help shape the future of this city. You're not just another cog in the machine. You're part of something bigger, but I can't do it alone. Jamal nodded, trying to steady his thoughts. This wasn't just a business deal, it was an opportunity to prove something to himself, to break free from the cycle he had been stuck in for so long. It wasn't just about making money, it was about creating something meaningful. "I'm in," Jamal said, his voice quiet but resolute. "I don't know how this is all going to work, but I'm willing to try. I want to be part of this." Marcus's eyes lit up, and for the first time, Jamal saw him not as the polished millionaire, but as someone who genuinely cared about what he was doing. "You've just made the right choice," Marcus said, leaning forward, his tone full of conviction, "and I'm going to help you every step of the way." The two shook hands, and Jamal couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement and fear. All at once, he had just made a commitment that would change everything, but now there was no turning back. The following weeks felt like a whirlwind for Jamal. The excitement of his decision hadn't worn off, but the reality of the commitment he'd made was beginning to settle in. It wasn't just about ideas and grand visions anymore. It was about putting in the work, stepping up, and proving that he had what it took to be part of something bigger. Marcus had given him a few days to adjust, allowing Jamal the time to wrap his head around his new role. But now, the real work was starting. Jamal was invited to his first meeting, one that would set the tone for everything that followed. It was an early morning, the sun barely rising over the horizon, as Jamal, dressed in his best clothes, something he'd borrowed from his older cousin, who worked in an office job. He couldn't afford expensive suits, but he was determined to show up with confidence. Walking into the glass-walled office building where Marcus worked, Jamal couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. This wasn't like the neighborhood he was used to. This was a different world, a world of suits, polished shoes, and sleek, expensive furniture. He swallowed his nerves and followed the receptionist to the meeting room. Marcus was already there, sitting at the head of a long table. A few other people were present too, professionals who worked in various sectors of the city, all brought together for this new venture. Jamal had seen some of them on TV or read about them in the papers. These were people who made things happen. And now, here he was, sitting among them. "Jamal," Marcus said with a smile as Jamal entered, standing up and gesturing for him to take a seat. "Glad you could join us." "Thanks for having me," Jamal replied, his voice steadier than he felt. He pulled out the chair and sat down, trying to maintain his composure. "All right, everyone," Marcus began, addressing the group. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us, and Jamal's going to be playing an integral part in this. He's got the vision, and he's got the heart. We're here to put that into action." Jamal felt the eyes of the room on him, and his palms began to sweat. He wasn't used to being the center of attention, especially not among people who had been in the business world for years. But this was his chance to show that he belonged, that he wasn't just some kid off the streets trying to play in a game he didn't understand. Marcus continued, outlining the first step in their grand plan, revitalizing a section of the city that had long been ignored. There was a plan to build affordable housing, start community programs, and create jobs that would help local residents thrive. It was an ambitious project, one that would take months, if not years, to complete. But Marcus believed in it and in Jamal. As Marcus spoke, Jamal's mind raced. He had never been part of something this big before. The scale was daunting. There were so many moving parts, so many people involved. But then again, that's exactly why he was here, wasn't it? He had the drive, the determination, and most importantly, the right perspective. He hadn't lost sight of what it meant to help people who were struggling, just like he had. And now, he had to use that to make a real impact. "You're going to be leading the community outreach, Jamal," Marcus said, pulling Jamal out of his thoughts. "You've got the experience with the neighborhood, the people. You know what they need, and you know how to talk to them. We're not just building structures, we're building relationships." Jamal blinked, surprised by the responsibility being handed to him. Lead the community outreach. He had never done anything like that before. Sure, he had worked at the local grocery store, interacting with customers every day, but this was different. This was on a much larger scale. Marcus, I don't know if I'm ready for that, Jamal said, his voice uncertain. I've never run anything this big before. Marcus met his eyes with a steady gaze. You're more ready than you think, Jamal. You understand the people because you are one of them. You know their struggles. That's the perspective that's going to make this work. Don't doubt yourself. Jamal looked around at the group, all of whom seemed to be waiting for him to speak. There was an unspoken expectation hanging in the air. He couldn't back down now. He had made his choice, and this was the moment that would define his journey. I'll do it, Jamal said, his voice gaining strength. I may not have all the answers, but I'll give it everything I've got. The room seemed to exhale collectively, and Marcus smiled. That's the spirit. All right, let's get started. The first task was to meet with local community, leaders and residents to get their input. Marcus had set up meetings with some key figures who could help shape the outreach efforts. It wasn't going to be easy. Jamal knew that. But he also knew that if he didn't take this leap, if he didn't push past his own doubts, he'd never know if he was capable of succeeding. Over the next few weeks, Jamal visited schools, community, centers, and local businesses. He spoke to anyone who would listen, asking them what they needed, what they wanted to see change in their neighborhoods. Jamal found that people didn't just want handouts. They wanted opportunities. They wanted real chances to improve their lives, to build something for themselves. Some of the feedback was hard to hear. Many residents were skeptical, wondering if this was just another flashy initiative that would fizzle out. Others had been burned by empty promises in the past, but Jamal didn't back down. He kept showing up, kept listening, and kept pushing for change. His work started to gain traction. People saw his commitment, and they began to trust him. Word spread about Jamal's genuine efforts, and soon more and more people came forward, eager to contribute. He had started to build the foundation of the trust and relationships that would make the project a success. But there were challenges ahead. Not everyone in the community was on board. There were powerful forces who didn't want to see the changes Jamal and Marcus were trying to bring. And Jamal knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he had made the choice. And now, there was no turning back. The next few weeks were an intense roller coaster for Jamal. What had started as a grand vision with endless potential was beginning to show its darker side. As much as people were responding positively to his efforts, there were forces at play that didn't want things to change, people who felt threatened by what Marcus and Jamal were trying to do. It wasn't just the big corporate interests that Jamal had expected to clash with. There were local figures, community leaders, business owners, even some residents who had grown comfortable with the way things were and didn't want to rock the boat. Change was disruptive, and Jamal was finding that out the hard way. One of the first signs of trouble came during a meeting with a local business owner, Mr. Carson, who ran a large construction firm in the city. The plan was to partner with him to start developing affordable housing, but when Jamal laid out the vision, it was clear that Mr. Carson wasn't interested in the community-centered aspect of the project. This whole help the people angle is nice and all, but I'm in this for the money, kid, Mr. Carson said bluntly, leaning back in his chair, his fingers tapping rhythmically against the polished wood of his desk. I'm not here to do charity work. I built a successful business by cutting through the nonsense. If I'm going to partner with you, it's going to be on my terms. Jamal tried to keep his voice steady, the tension in the room palpable. It's not about charity, it's about creating something sustainable, something that benefits both the community and the business sector. Mr. Carson snorted. Sustainability is just another word for slow and steady, and I don't Have time for that. If you want my help, you better make it worth my while. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. I'm talking profit, not some feel-good mission. Jamal's heart raced. He had expected pushback, but not like this. The world he was stepping into wasn't about the idealism he had imagined. It was about power, influence, and money. And the people he was hoping would help him were more concerned with their bottom lines than making a real difference. Jamal left that meeting feeling more uncertain than ever. Was he in over his head? Was this dream of creating real change even possible? It felt like the closer he got to making progress, the harder the pushback became. He was questioning if he was really equipped to fight these battles that weren't just about changing buildings, but changing minds. As Jamal continued his outreach, the resistance only grew. There were whispers in the community, skepticism, from some local leaders who worried that Jamal's involvement with Marcus Lewis meant the project would only benefit the wealthy elite. Others believed the plan was a facade to gentrify their neighborhoods and push long-time residents out. Jamal knew that if he didn't address these concerns head-on, his efforts would be undermined before they even got off the ground. But Jamal wasn't backing down. He'd spent too long fighting for what he believed in to give up now. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the people who had put their trust in him. The people who were counting on him to deliver on the promises made. And then there was the night of the big community rally. Jamal had spent days preparing for the rally, a major event meant to bring together the local residents, business owners, and anyone else who was interested in the project. It was going to be an opportunity to address the concerns, share the vision, and rally people to the cause. Marcus had offered to speak at the event, but Jamal had insisted on taking the lead himself. It was his project now, and he needed to step up. The night was cold, but the streets were alive with people, some skeptical, others excited, all curious to see what Jamal and his team had to offer. Jamal arrived early, checking the setup and making sure everything was in place. He had put his heart and soul into this moment, hoping that it would be a turning point for the project, but in the back of his mind, he knew the risks. He knew there were people who didn't want him to succeed. As the rally began, Jamal stood at the front of the crowd, his hands shaking slightly. He had done speeches before, at school, at church, but this was different. This wasn't a speech for applause or praise. This was his chance to show people, who were doubtful that he could be trusted, to convince them that this wasn't just about big names and promises. It was about them. It was about giving them the tools and the opportunities they deserved. Thank you all for coming, Jamal began, his voice steady despite the nerves twisting in his stomach. I know some of you are skeptical. I know some of you think this is just another one of those projects where people like me show up, make a lot of noise, and leave with their pockets full, leaving you with nothing. But that's not what this is. Jamal paused, letting his words sink in. The crowd was silent, watching him intently. I've been where you are. I know what it's like to watch promises get broken, to see the same people talk about change and never deliver. But this time, it's different. This time, we're in this together. This is about creating opportunities for everyone, not just a few. This is about making sure that every single person in this community has a chance to thrive, to succeed, to build a future. And we're starting right now. He could feel the energy in the crowd begin to shift. Some of the skepticism was fading, replaced by curiosity, hope, but he also noticed a group of people near the back of the crowd, standing with their arms crossed, not buying a word of it. It was clear now that this wasn't just a community rally, it was the beginning of something much bigger, and Jamal was at the center of it all. But just as Jamal thought he was gaining ground, he saw a familiar face in the crowd. It was Mr. Carson, the same business owner who had been so resistant to the project. Jamal felt a pang of frustration. Was this man trying to disrupt everything he had worked for? Why show up now, after everything that had been said? As Jamal continued to speak, Mr. Carson made his way to the front, purposefully cutting through the crowd. He was looking right at Jamal with a smug expression on his face. Jamal took a deep breath. He could feel the tension rising in the air. But this time, he wasn't going to let the resistance win. "You've made your point, Jamal," Mr. Carson called out, his voice cutting through the crowd. "But you're going to find out the hard way that you can't change this city without a little bit of muscle. And you certainly won't do it by ignoring the people who actually know how to make things happen." Jamal squared his shoulders, staring back at the businessman. "I'm not here to play by the old rules, Mr. Carson," Jamal said firmly. "This isn't about power or money. This is about people. And if you're not with us, then maybe it's time you stepped aside." The rally ended with mixed reactions. Jamal had gained some support, but there was still a long way to go. The fight for this project was only just beginning, and Jamal knew it was going to take more than just words. It was going to take action, persistence, and the strength to stand his ground against those who would try to tear him down. But Jamal wasn't afraid. The resistance was real, but he had a vision, and he wasn't backing down. Weeks had passed since the rally, and Jamal was starting to feel the weight of the world bearing down on him. The resistance hadn't slowed down. If anything, it had intensified. Local politicians had begun to question his motives, community groups were suspicious of his intentions, and whispers of a power grab spread like wildfire. Jamal had anticipated opposition, but this level of scrutiny was more than he'd bargained for. Every move he made seemed to be scrutinized. Every step forward met with a pushback. Marcus, who had been a steady pillar of support for Jamal, noticed the strain in his eyes. They sat across from each other at Marcus's downtown office, the space exuding the cold luxury of success, a stark contrast to the fire that burned within Jamal. "You look worn out," Marcus observed, his tone reflecting a mix of concern and admiration. "What's going on?" Jamal leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "It's like everyone's coming for me, Marcus. I try to make a difference, but it feels like the more I push, the more people fight back. It's exhausting. I'm starting to wonder if I'm making any real impact at all." Marcus studied him quietly for a moment, his fingers steepled in front of him. "That's exactly what they want you to feel. They want you to question yourself, to doubt whether it's worth it. But let me tell you something, Jamal. The hardest battles are often the ones that matter the most." Jamal looked up at Marcus, grateful for the older man's perspective, but the weight of the world still pressed down on him. "I'm trying to fight for something bigger than myself, but it's hard to keep going when it feels like no one wants to see the change I'm pushing for." Marcus nodded, his gaze unwavering. "You know, it's not about getting everyone on board, not at first. People are scared of change. They don't want to risk the things that are comfortable, even if those things aren't working for them anymore. What you're doing is shaking things up. And when you do that, you'll find that people either dig in their heels or rise up to join you. The real question is, how bad do you want this?" Jamal's mind raced. How bad did he want this? The answer was clear. More than anything, this was bigger than him. It was about the future of the community, the lives he could change, the people who were depending on him. But the struggle was real, and the sacrifices were beginning to take their toll. He had already lost friends along the way. People he thought would stand by him had turned away, unsure of the path he was walking. "All right," Jamal said, finally standing up. "I'm not giving up. I need to refocus. I can't let the noise drown me out." Marcus smiled, a genuine expression of pride. "That's what I like to hear. You've got the drive, Jamal. You've got the vision. Now it's time to make sure everyone else sees it too." In the days that followed, Jamal decided it was time to shake things up. If the community wouldn't come to him, he would go to them. He knew he couldn't continue to operate from behind closed doors. The people needed to hear directly from him, his vision, his motivations, and most importantly, his commitment. So he took to the streets. He visited local schools, community centers, and town hall meetings, speaking to anyone who would listen. It was during one of these visits that Jamal met a young woman named Ava. She was a high school teacher, passionate about education and committed to helping her students find opportunities outside their limited circumstances. Ava had heard about Jamal's initiative and was skeptical at first, but after speaking with him, she was convinced that he wasn't just another well-meaning philanthropist. He was someone who truly cared. "I've been following your work, Jamal," Ava said, her eyes sharp as she looked at him, "and I want to help. We need more mentors, more resources for the kids who aren't getting the support they need. I'm in, but we need more than just talk. We need action." Jamal smiled, the weight lifting slightly off his shoulders. "That's what I've been trying to tell everyone, but there are too many people who don't want to see this succeed. They're afraid of what's coming." Ava shook her head. "Fear doesn't last when people see results. You just need to show them that what you're doing is worth believing in. People like me, we're already on board, but you've got to make them believe." Her words hit him hard. What they were building wasn't just a project. It was a movement. Jamal had been so focused on the challenges that he had lost sight of the allies he was gaining along the way. Ava's commitment was a reminder of the power of his vision, and the fact that others were starting to see it too. As Jamal left the community center that day, something within him shifted. It was like a dam had broken inside, and the floodgates opened. He had been so focused on overcoming resistance that he had forgotten about the strength in numbers. The people who believed in him were just as important as the ones who didn't. The doubters and critics weren't the only voices in this fight. There were others who were ready to join him, to stand with him. The following weeks were a whirlwind. Jamal worked closely with Ava and others in the community to set up mentorship programs, after-school activities, and job training initiatives for young people. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. More and more people started to see the tangible benefits of the project. They saw the programs that were providing real opportunities for youth. They saw the families being lifted up, the neighborhoods beginning to change for the better. But even as things started to gain momentum, Jamal knew that the fight wasn't over. There were still those who wanted to see him fail, who would stop at nothing to tear down what he was trying to build. And there was still one major player to contend with, the very people who had been trying to control the narrative all along. But now Jamal was ready. He had the community, he had the vision, and he had the heart. He wasn't going to let anyone or anything stand in the way of the change he had started. Despite the progress Jamal had made in the community, the tension still lingered. There were forces, both seen and unseen, trying to sabotage his efforts. And it wasn't just about the politicians and corporate entities trying to maintain their grip on power. Now it was about the larger, more dangerous game, the battle for trust. Jamal had learned early on that changing a city wasn't just about policies and programs. It was about the people. People had to believe in the change, and that trust was harder to earn than any investment or business deal. Marcus had warned him countless times about the fragility of trust. In the business world, it could be built through shared goals and mutual benefits. But in the world of social change, trust was built through consistency, integrity, and personal connection. And for Jamal, that was going to be the most difficult part of all. He sat at his desk late one evening, reviewing the latest reports from his team. Ava had made considerable strides in the mentorship programs, and the job training workshops were beginning to show real results. But the headlines still painted a different picture. Every local paper seemed to have a story questioning his motives, casting doubts on the legitimacy of his initiatives. Some even went so far as to accuse him of being a puppet of larger corporate interests, a claim that couldn't have been further from the truth. But the media's narrative was powerful. The more the negative stories circulated, the more people began to question his intentions. They saw the headlines, heard the rumors, and began to doubt the very foundation of the project. Marcus had been keeping a close eye on the media backlash, and he could see the writing on the wall. "You're not going to win this fight in the newspapers, Jamal," he had said. "You have to fight this battle face to face. If you want to prove that your vision is real, you need to show people, up close, in their neighborhoods, in their communities, that you're the real deal." Jamal took Marcus's advice to heart, but the question remained, how could he rebuild trust when the media had already poisoned the well? How could he regain control of the narrative? That's when Jamal decided to take another bold step. It wasn't just about doing more. He needed to give people a chance to see him, to hear directly from him. He needed to show them his sincerity and his vision in a way that no headline ever could. He started organizing town halls, personal appearances, and open forums in the very neighborhoods that were beginning to feel the impact of his work. Jamal knew that the people who lived there weren't interested in what some reporter had written. They wanted to know who he really was. The first of these town halls took place in a small community center in the heart of the city's most underserved neighborhood. The turnout was modest at first, just a handful of people who had heard about Jamal's efforts. But as Jamal spoke, sharing his vision and his personal story, the crowd grew. He spoke with an honesty and vulnerability that few had expected. He didn't just talk about the big ideas. He spoke about his struggles, his doubts, and the fear he'd felt when the project first began to take shape. He admitted that there were times he felt overwhelmed by the enormity of it all, but he also made it clear that he wasn't going to back down. This wasn't just some passion project for him, it was his purpose. The more Jamal spoke, the more people began to listen. By the end of the evening, the crowd was no longer a group of skeptical strangers. They had become supporters, people who saw in Jamal not just a leader, but someone who genuinely cared about the future of their community. After the event, Jamal stayed behind to speak with the attendees one-on-one. They asked him questions, shared their concerns, and in turn, Jamal listened. He didn't offer empty promises. He answered honestly, even when it was hard. He was transparent about the challenges ahead and acknowledged that the road would be long. But what he gave them that night wasn't just a vision, it was a shared belief that they could make a difference together. The ripple effect was immediate. Over the next few weeks, more town halls were scheduled in different neighborhoods. The local media began to take notice. The stories that had painted Jamal in a negative light were slowly being replaced with articles that focused on the real change he was helping to bring about. The skeptics remained, of course, but now they had a harder time dismissing Jamal's credibility when people were speaking up in support of him. It wasn't an easy process. There were still heated debates, and the battle for trust wasn't won overnight. But Jamal was beginning to see something that had eluded him in the past. The people were starting to trust him again. Not because of some polished media campaign or well-funded ad, but because he had taken the time to show up, to engage, and to be vulnerable. In one of the final town halls, an older man approached Jamal after his speech. "I've seen a lot of young people come and go," the man said, his voice gruff but kind. "They talk big, promise change, and then disappear when things get tough. You're different. You don't seem like you're in this for yourself. You're fighting for something bigger than you, and that's the kind of leadership we need." Jamal nodded, feeling the weight of the man's words. It wasn't the first time he'd heard something like that, but it meant more now. This wasn't just about the programs or the resources. It was about a collective belief in a better future. And that belief, he realized, was the cornerstone of everything he was fighting for. As he left the town hall that evening, Jamal felt a new sense of purpose. The road ahead was still uncertain, and the challenges remained, but he was no longer fighting alone. He had earned back the trust of the people, and with that trust came the strength to face whatever came next. Jamal's rise to prominence in the community had been nothing short of remarkable, but as the saying goes, the higher you climb, the harder you fall. With each new success, the pressure mounted. While his grassroots efforts were gaining traction, Jamal soon discovered that he wasn't just battling skepticism and doubt. There were other, much darker forces at play. The local politicians, who had initially smiled at his ideas and even offered token support, were starting to see him as a threat. Jamal's vision of a more equitable city, one where the wealth gap was closed and opportunity was accessible to all, was beginning to undermine the status quo. In their eyes, he wasn't just another upstart. He was a challenge to their power, their influence, and their ability to control the future of the city. And it wasn't just the politicians. Powerful corporate interests were also beginning to take notice of Jamal's growing influence. These were companies that had long exploited the city's underprivileged neighborhoods, profiting from poor education systems, high crime rates, and a lack of accessible resources. Jamal's mission to flip the script and redirect resources toward the people who needed it most posed a direct threat to their bottom line. Jamal wasn't naive. He knew that progress had its enemies, those who profited from keeping things as they were. But as the pressure mounted, Jamal began to feel the weight of it in ways he hadn't anticipated. It started with whispers, rumors spread by anonymous sources questioning Jamal's intentions, his finances, even his relationships with other influential figures in the city. At first, Jamal brushed it off. He had dealt with critics before, and he knew the power of persistence. But then came the direct attacks. Unfounded accusations aired on local news stations, social media posts that spread like wildfire, and anonymous letters filled with veiled threats. Someone was clearly trying to discredit him, to destabilize the movement he had spent so long building. Marcus, who had been with Jamal from the beginning, noticed the change in his friend. Jamal, once driven by a fire to change the world, was now showing signs of doubt. The sleepless nights were taking their toll, and the pressure from all sides was starting to crack his resolve. It was the kind of pressure that broke even the strongest individuals. "You need to face this head-on," Marcus told him one evening, as they sat in a dimly lit cafe, sipping coffee in silence. The weight of the conversation had settled in between them like a heavy fog. "You can't let them tear you down with rumors and lies." Jamal looked at his mentor, feeling both a sense of gratitude and helplessness. "I know, Marcus, but it's getting hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Everywhere I turn, someone's trying to pull the rug out from under me. People are losing faith. I can feel it." Marcus leaned forward, his gaze intense. "You know this better than anyone, Jamal. Change doesn't come easy. There will always be resistance. There will always be people who want to keep things the way they are because it benefits them. But if you let them get to you, then they've already won." The words stung, but they were the truth. Jamal had been so focused on the goal that he'd neglected the reality of the battle. Change, true change, would always be met with resistance, and while the path to a better future was paved with good intentions, it was never without sacrifice. That night, Jamal didn't sleep. He lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing through the possibilities. There were always forces working in the background, pulling strings, maneuvering behind closed doors. He knew this. He'd seen it in the way some of the city's most powerful people operated, but now those forces were focused on him. The next day, Jamal called a meeting with his closest advisors. It was time to formulate a strategy, not just to deal with the rumors, but to confront the opposition head-on. He needed to take control of the narrative. He couldn't afford to let these attacks go unanswered. Not anymore. Ava, one of his most trusted team members, spoke first. "We know these attacks are coming from the top. The politicians, the corporate interests, they're scared of what you're building. But we can't let them derail us. We have a strong base now. People believe in you, Jamal. We need to remind them why they do." Jamal nodded, appreciating the support. "I've been thinking a lot about that. I can't just ignore it. I have to face it directly, but I also need to show people that I'm still the same person they believed in when I first started. We need to organize something big, something that sends a clear message that I'm not backing down." The idea was simple yet powerful. Jamal would host a large-scale community event, an open forum where he would address the accusations head-on, speak directly to the people, and reaffirm his commitment to the city's future. The event would also highlight the progress he'd made with his initiatives, showcasing the tangible change that had already begun to take shape in the community. But even as Jamal began to make plans for the event, he knew the risks. There would be protesters, organized groups of people with their own agendas, both political and financial. He expected the opposition to use this moment to try and discredit him further. But he also knew that if done right, this event could be the defining moment in his fight for the city's future. The days leading up to the event were filled with intense preparation. Jamal worked closely with his team to ensure everything was in place. He needed to control the narrative to ensure that when the event took place, the people saw not just the leader of a movement, but a man willing to stand up for what he believed. In the day of the event arrived, and Jamal stood backstage, his heart racing. He had done everything he could to prepare, but now it was out of his hands. This was his moment to show the city who he truly was. As he walked onto the stage, the crowd erupted in applause, but Jamal's mind was focused on one thing. He couldn't let the voices of doubt win. He had a city to change, and no matter what it took, he was ready to fight for it. The crowd outside the venue was buzzing with energy. The open forum Jamal had organized was set to begin in an hour, and the tension in the air was palpable. The venue, an old auditorium in the heart of the city, had been packed to the brim. People of all ages, backgrounds and walks of life had shown up to hear from the man who was quickly becoming the symbol of hope for many. But with the mounting pressure and the orchestrated attacks against him, Jamal felt the weight of it all. Inside the backstage area, Jamal stood in front of a large mirror, trying to steady his breath. His reflection showed a young man with determination in his eyes, but also a deep weariness. He had been through so much in the past few months: attacks on his character, threats from unknown sources, and the constant pressure to deliver results. But none of that mattered right now. What mattered was the people who had shown up today, the people who had placed their trust in him, and most importantly, it was the message he needed to deliver. "Jamal," Marcus's voice broke through, his thoughts steady and calm. He had been with Jamal since the very beginning, and he knew exactly how much this moment meant. "You've got this. Just speak from the heart." Jamal turned to his mentor, nodding silently. His mind was racing, but there was a clarity that was beginning to form. He was here because he believed in this city and its people, and now he had the chance to prove that his vision wasn't just a dream. It was a movement that could change the future for good. Marcus placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "You've already done the hard part. You've built something that matters. Now it's time to show them what you've been fighting for." With those words, Jamal felt a sense of calm wash over him. It wasn't about fighting the opposition anymore. It was about reaffirming his commitment to the people. His vision had always been about empowering others, about creating a future where everyone had the opportunity to succeed. It was time to remind them of that. And to remind himself. The curtain rose, and Jamal walked out onto the stage to deafening applause. The cheers of the crowd echoed in his ears, and for a moment, He felt like he had already won. But as he took the microphone in hand and looked out over the sea of faces, the reality of the situation hit him once again. He wasn't just here to speak, he was here to face the very forces that had been trying to tear him down. He cleared his throat and began, "Good evening, everyone." Jamal's voice was steady but warm. "Thank you all for being here today. I know many of you have heard the rumors, the accusations, the stories that have been circulating. I know some of you are here today because you believe in me, and I know others might be here with doubts. And that's okay. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I'm here to tell you what I believe." The audience fell silent, hanging on his every word. "I believe that every person deserves a chance. I believe that no matter where you come from, no matter how much money you have, no matter what neighborhood you live in, everyone deserves the opportunity to succeed. I believe that the future of this city should be one where no one is left behind, where people like you and me, people who work hard, who care about our families and our communities, are the ones who shape the future, not the ones who sit at the top and pull the strings from behind closed doors." A murmur of agreement spread through the crowd. "I know that change isn't easy," Jamal continued. "I know that there are people who are scared of what we're building, people who benefit from the way things are now. But I'm here to tell you that we will not be intimidated. We will not back down. The movement we're building is bigger than any one person, and it's bigger than the people who want to stop it. It's about all of us. It's about our future, and I'm not going to let anyone take that away." The crowd erupted into applause, and Jamal could feel the energy shifting. This wasn't just a speech, this was a call to action. He wasn't alone anymore. He had the support of the people who had shown up, despite the risks, despite the doubts, to be part of something greater than themselves. "I know I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes along the way, and I've learned from them. But what I haven't learned to do is give up," Jamal said, his voice strong and unwavering. "And I'm not going to stop fighting for this city. Not now, not ever. Because this city belongs to all of us." The applause was deafening. Jamal's words had struck a chord with the crowd, and he could feel the momentum shifting in his favor. But there was still work to be done. There were still obstacles ahead, and he couldn't let himself get complacent. This was just the beginning. As the applause died down, Jamal looked out over the audience, meeting the eyes of as many people as he could. He saw faces full of hope, faces full of resolve. These were the people who believed in him, who were willing to stand with him in the face of adversity. And Jamal knew that together they would make this vision a reality. The meeting continued for another hour as Jamal laid out his plans for the future, his initiatives for education reform, affordable housing, and job creation. Each word he spoke, each idea he shared, was met with enthusiastic support from the crowd. It was clear that the people were with him, and in that moment, Jamal felt more certain than ever that his vision was worth fighting for. But as the night drew to a close, Jamal couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle had just begun. The forces working against him were still out there, still trying to undermine his efforts, but with the people behind him, he knew he had the strength to face whatever came next. And so, as Jamal left the stage, his heart was filled with a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but it was a road worth walking. The day after the forum, Jamal sat in his office, the weight of the previous evening still lingering. The crowd's cheers, the energy that surged through the auditorium, the overwhelming sense of support, it all felt like a dream. But now, in the silence of the office, the reality of the situation came crashing back. The applause had faded, and in its place, the looming threat of the forces working against him became clearer than ever. Jamal stared out of his office window, watching the busy streets below. It was early, but the city was already awake. People rushing to work, cars honking, the usual hustle and bustle. But for Jamal, everything had changed. The moment he stepped off that stage, He wasn't just a young man with a vision. He was a symbol, and symbols were dangerous. His phone buzzed on the desk, pulling him from his thoughts. It was a text from Marcus. "Meet me at the usual place. I've got news." Jamal's stomach tightened. He knew what this meant. Marcus wasn't one for dramatic messages unless something serious was going on. He quickly grabbed his coat and left the office, his mind already racing through possible scenarios. The usual place was a small cafe on the outskirts of downtown. Jamal had been there many times before, but today the place felt different. It was more subdued, the hum of quiet conversation almost too loud in the otherwise serene atmosphere. Jamal spotted Marcus at their usual corner table, a cup of coffee in front of him, but no sign of the usual calm demeanor. His face was serious, his eyes sharp. Jamal slid into the chair across from him, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "What's going on?" he asked, keeping his voice low. Marcus took a deep breath and leaned in. "You were right to be worried. The opposition is starting to make their move. There's been talk, rumors of a smear campaign against you. They're digging into your past, trying to find anything they can to discredit you. They're not going to stop." Jamal's mind raced. He had always known that his rise would be met with resistance, but hearing it out loud made it all feel more real. He had expected to face some challenges, but this was a direct attack. "Who's behind it?" Jamal asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Is it the same people we've been tracking?" Marcus nodded, his gaze unwavering. "Yes, they've been quietly pulling the strings from the shadows, but now they're getting desperate. They know that the more support you get, the harder it will be to stop you, and that's why they're going after you directly. They're going to try to make you look like a fraud, someone unworthy of the trust the people have placed in you." Jamal's jaw clenched. This was exactly what he had been preparing for. He had known that they would try to break him down. What he hadn't expected was just how low they were willing to go. "How do we fight back?" Jamal asked, his voice filled with determination. "I won't let them tear this down, not after everything we've built." Marcus paused, his eyes narrowing slightly as if weighing his words carefully. "You're not going to fight them directly. That's what they want, to drag you into a public battle where they can tear you apart piece by piece. What you need to do is keep your focus on the people. They're the ones who will ultimately decide your fate, not your detractors. Keep showing them who you are, your vision, your commitment to this city. The more they attack, the stronger. You need to stand." Jamal nodded slowly, taking in Marcus's advice. It wasn't about fighting fire with fire. It was about staying true to his message, showing the world that he was a man of integrity who wasn't going to let the noise distract him. But even as he absorbed Marcus's words, Jamal couldn't shake the gnawing feeling of uncertainty. His past was filled with mistakes, things he wasn't proud of, and the idea of those being used against him made his stomach turn. But he had come this far, and there was no turning back now. "Is there anything we can do to stop them?" Jamal asked, his voice firm. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his hands clasped together. "For now, we wait. We need to see how far they're willing to go. And in the meantime, we keep moving forward. Build stronger alliances. Push the message harder. Keep your focus on the people, not the noise. The more you engage with them, the less power the opposition has." Jamal's thoughts were already racing ahead. He had always been strategic, but this situation was different. This wasn't just a business deal or a community project. It was a battle for his future. And in this battle, he couldn't afford to make any missteps. "I'm going to need to do more," Jamal said, his voice resolute. "I need to talk to the people directly. Get out there, hold more forums, more events. I need to show them I'm not just some figurehead. I'm their advocate. I'm their voice. And I'll do whatever it takes to prove it." Marcus nodded in approval. "That's the spirit, Jamal. You've got the right mindset. Just remember, this isn't going to be easy. They'll try everything to bring you down. But as long as you stay true to your message and your vision, they won't succeed." Jamal stood up, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead was filled with uncertainty, but he wasn't afraid of the challenges anymore. He had come this far by believing in himself, and he wasn't about to let anyone take that away from him. As Jamal left the cafe, his mind was focused on the task ahead. He knew that the coming days would be crucial. The opposition wouldn't just go away. They would continue to try and discredit him, to tear down everything he had worked for. But Jamal was ready. He had his vision, and he had the people behind him. And with that, he knew there was nothing they could throw at him that he couldn't overcome. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Jamal threw himself into his work, determined not to let the opposition's tactics derail everything he had built. Marcus's words echoed in his mind every time the pressure seemed unbearable. Stay focused on the people. And that's exactly what he did. He began holding weekly forums across the city, small gatherings where he could directly engage with the community. These events weren't just about politics or business, they were about something far more personal. Jamal wanted the people to see him as more than just a politician or entrepreneur. He wanted them to see him as one of them, a person who understood their struggles, their dreams, and their hopes. The forums quickly became a success. People came in droves, eager to hear Jamal speak about the future of the city, the changes they all desperately needed. He spoke about equality, job creation, affordable housing, and education. But more importantly, he spoke about hope. Hope that their voices could finally be heard, that their lives could improve. Jamal had always known the power of connection, but now he was seeing it firsthand. The more he engaged with the community, the more people believed in his cause. They weren't just supporting him, they were joining him, becoming part of the movement that was slowly but surely gaining traction. But the opposition wasn't about to sit idly by. Jamal's rise was threatening everything they had worked for, and they were pulling out all the stops. They began circulating fabricated stories, hiring social media influencers to discredit him, and even planting fake news articles. Every day, there seemed to be another attack on his character. They were ruthless, and they knew how to manipulate public perception. Jamal could feel the pressure mounting. There were moments when the weight of it all felt unbearable, when he would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, questioning whether he was strong enough to face it all. But every time he felt doubt creeping in, he remembered the faces of the people who had attended his forums, the look of hope in their eyes, and he knew he couldn't quit. "I can't let them win," Jamal muttered to himself one evening as he sat at his desk reviewing a mountain of news reports and social media posts. He picked up his phone and dialed Marcus's number. "Marcus, I need to talk." It only took a few rings before Marcus answered. "What's going on, Jamal?" Jamal exhaled sharply, feeling the weight of his frustrations. "They're attacking me from every angle. Fake news, lies, rumors, it's getting worse, and I don't know how much longer I can keep up this facade." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. "Listen, Jamal," Marcus began, his voice steady and calm. "I know it's tough. I know it feels like they're closing in. But let me remind you of something. This isn't the first time someone like you has been targeted. It's happened before, and it'll happen again. The difference is, you've got something they don't, real, genuine support from the people, and that's what's going to win in the end." Jamal didn't respond immediately. He let Marcus's words sink in. It was true. Despite all the attacks, he still had the support of the people. They had seen through the lies, they had heard his message, and they believed in it. That was something no amount of smears could take away. "You're right," Jamal said finally, his voice firmer now. I can't let them break me, but I need to do more. I need to get ahead of the narrative, expose the truth before they can twist it further. Marcus nodded, even though Jamal couldn't see him. Exactly. You've got the resources. You've got the team. It's time to take the offensive. Start telling your own story before they can control it. Don't let them define who you are. Show the world who you really are. Jamal felt a surge of resolve. He knew what he had to do. The next day, he gathered his team, his closest allies, the ones who had been with him from the beginning, and they devised a plan. It was time for a counteroffensive. They would turn the tables on the opposition and expose the lies being spread about him. They would create a campaign centered on truth, transparency, and accountability, and they would do it in a way that couldn't be twisted or manipulated. Jamal would host a live-streamed town hall event. No filters, no edits, just him speaking directly to the people, addressing the rumors and sharing his side of the story. It was a bold move, but it was the only way to take control of the narrative. The day of the event arrived, and the tension was palpable. Jamal stood backstage, the hum of the equipment filling the air as he prepared for what was about to happen. He had been through countless speeches and public appearances, but this was different. This was raw, unfiltered, and real. There was no room for mistakes. His heart raced as the countdown began. The camera turned on, and Jamal stepped forward into the spotlight. "Good evening, everyone," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion. "I'm here tonight to speak to you directly, to clear the air and set the record straight. Over the past few weeks, there's been a lot of noise, rumors, lies, and attacks against me, but I'm not here to fight back with anger or hatred. I'm here to speak the truth." He paused for a moment, his eyes scanning the live comments streaming in from viewers across the city. This wasn't just a speech, it was a conversation, a moment for the people to see him for who he truly was. Jamal continued, sharing the truth. Behind the lies, exposing the fabricated stories that had been circulated. He talked about his past, the mistakes he had made, and the lessons he had learned. He didn't sugarcoat anything. For the first time, the people saw the real Jamal, the man who had worked tirelessly to get where he was, who had faced adversity, and who was now standing strong in the face of attacks. By the end of the broadcast, the tide had begun to turn. The support he had built over the months grew even stronger. People flooded the comment section with messages of encouragement and solidarity. They appreciated his honesty, his transparency, and his refusal to be intimidated. The aftermath of Jamal's live-streamed town hall was nothing short of transformative. The power of direct communication, of speaking from the heart, had turned the tide in his favor. The smear campaigns from the opposition began to lose their potency as more and more people rallied behind Jamal. For the first time, he felt the full force of the people's support, and it filled him with a renewed sense of purpose. But the road ahead was far from easy. While the tide had shifted, the battle was far from won. The opposition, now desperate, was regrouping and planning their next move. They were more organized than ever, and Jamal knew they would stop at nothing to try and tear him down again. It was becoming clear that this wasn't just a political fight. It was a fight for the soul of the city, and Jamal was standing at the center of it all. As the pressure mounted, Jamal found himself once again in his office, staring out the window, reflecting on everything that had led him here. The city stretched out before him, its skyline a constant reminder of the stakes. This wasn't just about his future, it was about the future of everyone who had put their trust in him, and that was something Jamal wasn't willing to lose. His phone rang, snapping him out of his thoughts. He looked at the caller ID. "Marcus." "Jamal," Marcus said on the other end, his voice full of resolve. "I know this is getting harder, but you've got this. You're doing exactly what you need to do. You've built something real. You've got the people behind you." "I can feel it," Jamal replied, his voice tinged with a mix of determination and weariness. but the pressure's only going to get worse. They won't stop." "They never do," Marcus said. "But neither should you. You've come this far, and there's no turning back. You're not just fighting for your dream anymore. You're fighting for the city's future. You're building something that's going to outlast all of this. People like you don't quit, Jamal, not when it matters." Marcus's words gave Jamal the strength he needed. He wasn't just in this for himself anymore. He was in it for the community, for the generations that would come after him. He thought about the children he had met at the forums, the parents who thanked him for standing up, and the elderly who had expressed hope in his vision. These were the people he was fighting for. They were the real reason he couldn't stop. Now, that evening, Jamal held a meeting with his closest allies, the ones who had been with him since the beginning. They sat around a large table, papers scattered across the surface, their eyes focused on the task ahead. "We've won the public's trust," Jamal began, "but we need to make sure that trust is never broken. We've got a message to send, a message of hope, progress, and unity. We're going to show the city that we are the future, that we're not backing down no matter what they throw at us." One of his team members, a strategist named Claire, leaned forward. "Jamal, you've got to keep pushing the positive narrative. You've exposed the lies, but now it's time to really focus on what you stand for. We need to flood the media with your story. The media might have been against us before, but now they're listening. They want a story with substance, a story that resonates with people." Jamal nodded, appreciating her insight. "You're right, we need to give them something they can't ignore. Let's keep pushing the message that we are about real change, real opportunity. We're not just another political movement. We're a movement for the people, by the people." As the team laid out their plan, Jamal felt a renewed sense of clarity. They would launch a massive media blitz, highlighting their successes and amplifying their message. It would be a comprehensive campaign that showcased the tangible changes they were already making in the city. New job programs, community outreach, educational partnerships, and local businesses thriving thanks to their initiatives. But it wasn't just about the media. Jamal knew that to truly change the city, he needed to expand his reach beyond the urban centers. He needed to speak to those who had been marginalized, forgotten by the mainstream political machine. He needed to show them that they too had a place in the future he was building. He announced a series of new initiatives aimed at supporting rural communities, improving infrastructure, offering grants for small businesses, and expanding educational opportunities. These efforts were designed not only to foster economic growth, but to give every citizen the tools to thrive. Jamal also recognized that his strength lay in the grassroots support he had cultivated. His network of supporters, volunteers, and activists had become the backbone of his campaign. They were the ones knocking on doors, making calls, spreading the message. It was time for them to take center stage. "I can't do this alone," Jamal told his team during the meeting. "It's not just about me, it's about all of us. We need to empower the people who believe in us to be the voice of change. I want them to take ownership of this movement. We're not just making promises, we're making history." As the campaign entered its final stretch, Jamal began holding larger rallies. The energy was electric. The support from the people was overwhelming, and Jamal felt their optimism fueling his own. Every time he took the stage, the crowd cheered, and he was reminded of why he had started this journey in the first place. The final rally was set to take place in the heart of the city, in a massive outdoor arena. Jamal was nervous, but he knew this was it. This was his moment to solidify everything he had worked for. He could feel the pressure of the thousands of eyes on him, but he knew what he had to do. This was his chance to deliver his message one last time, to speak directly to the city and show them that they had a future worth fighting for. On the night of the rally, Jamal stood backstage, the roar of the crowd ringing in his ears. As he stepped out onto the stage, the lights blinding him for a moment, he raised his hands, signaling for silence. The crowd fell into a hushed anticipation. He looked out over the sea of faces, all waiting for him to speak. And he knew this was his defining moment. "I'm not just standing here as a candidate," Jamal began, his voice strong and unwavering. "I'm standing here as a person who believes in the future we can build together. A future where everyone has a chance to succeed. A future where no one is left behind. We've fought, we've endured, and now it's time to create the world we've always dreamed of, together." The crowd erupted in applause, and Jamal felt a surge of energy. He had won their trust, and now he was ready to lead them into a new era. The battle wasn't over, but this was the beginning of something far greater than he had ever imagined.